Okay, so picture this. It's the 1500s, you're a nobleman in France, and your doctor, a guy who probably learned medicine from a book written by someone who'd never actually seen a human body, tells you something that sounds absolutely bonkers. He says, "My lord, if you bathe, you will surely perish." And you know what? You believe him. Not because you're stupid, but because literally everyone around you believes it too. That's the wild reality of medieval hygiene, and honestly, it's so absurd that it almost makes sense why people fell for it. Here's the thing nobody tells you about the Middle Ages. They didn't just avoid bathing because they were lazy or gross. They had what they genuinely thought was science backing them up. Medieval physicians, these guys were basically the influencers of their time, right? They looked at the human body and came up with this theory that absolutely haunted European civilization for centuries. They believed your skin had tiny pores, and water was like opening a door and inviting every plague, pestilence, and disease known to mankind straight into your bloodstream. It sounds insane now, but back then, with people literally dropping dead from mysterious illnesses left and right, it kind of made a twisted sort of sense. The logic went something like this. Hot water opens your pores, and once those pores are open, bad air, or miasma as they called it, could slip right in and poison you from the inside out. Cold water? Even worse, because it would shock your system and cause your pores to close up too fast, trapping the bad stuff inside. Either way, you're basically doomed. So what's the solution? Don't bathe. Ever. Just don't do it. Wear perfume instead. Lots of it. Drown yourself in rose water, lavender, and whatever other fragrant substances you can get your hands on. That'll keep the bad air away, right? And here's where it gets absolutely hilarious. They weren't wrong about needing to smell better, they were just catastrophically wrong about the method. Because while they were slathering themselves in perfume and avoiding water like it was liquid death, the actual diseases were spreading like wildfire through the filth, the rats, the fleas, and the complete absence of any actual sanitation. The Black Death? Yeah, that killed about 75 to 200 million people across Europe and Asia. And you know what might have helped? A bath. Maybe some soap. Definitely some basic hygiene. But instead, people were walking around in layers of unwashed clothing, covered in their own waste, literally because bathrooms were basically holes in the ground, and they thought that was the smart move. The really messed up part is that this belief wasn't just some random superstition that popped up overnight. It was backed by the medical establishment. Physicians wrote entire treatises about why bathing was dangerous. They cited ancient texts, they referenced the four humors theory, this idea that your body was made up of four fluids that needed to stay in perfect balance, and they made it sound so legitimate that kings and queens took their advice seriously. Queen Elizabeth I, one of the most powerful women in history, she allegedly bathed only once a month. Once a month. And she was considered hygienic by the standards of the time. But wait, there's more. Because medieval people weren't just avoiding bathing for health reasons. They also thought that getting clean was somehow spiritually dangerous. Some religious figures preached that cleanliness of the body was a distraction from cleanliness of the soul. So you've got this perfect storm of bad medicine, religious guilt, and genuine fear, all combining to create a civilization that was basically marinating in its own filth. And the smell? Oh man, the smell. Historical records describe medieval cities as absolutely putrid. People would carry flowers or herbs up to their noses just to avoid passing out from the stench. Perfume wasn't a luxury, it was a survival tool. Now, here's the thing that really gets me. They weren't completely wrong about water being dangerous. See, medieval water sources were absolutely contaminated. If you bathed in a river, you might be bathing in the same water that people upstream were using as a toilet. If you bathed in a well, you might be introducing bacteria directly into the community's water supply. So in a weird, backwards way, their fear of water made sense. Not because water itself was bad, but because their water was genuinely toxic. They just drew the completely wrong conclusion from that observation. The turning point came during the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, when people started actually studying how diseases spread and realized, oh, wait, maybe the problem isn't the water. Maybe it's the dirt. Maybe it's the rats. Maybe it's the fact that we're living in our own waste. Revolutionary stuff, right? But even then, it took centuries for bathing to become socially acceptable again. In the 1700s, people were still skeptical. Doctors were still warning against it. It wasn't until the 1800s when germ theory became mainstream and people finally understood that bacteria, not miasma, was the real killer, that regular bathing became a normal part of life. And get this, even after people figured out that bathing was actually good for you, there was still resistance. Some people thought that bathing too often would weaken your immune system. Others believed that certain types of water were better than others. There were debates about whether hot or cold water was superior. It's like humanity collectively decided to be wrong about hygiene for about 500 years straight, and then spent another 200 years slowly accepting the truth. The medieval approach to dealing with the smell was genuinely creative, though. If you couldn't bathe, you had to get creative with fragrance. The wealthy would wear pomanders, little balls filled with perfume and spices that they'd carry around and sniff constantly. They'd stuff their clothes with herbs, they'd use scented oils and powders. Some people even wore special clothing designed to trap fragrance. It was basically the medieval equivalent of spraying Febreze on a dirty couch instead of actually cleaning it. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. What's wild is that some cultures actually figured this out way before Europe did. In the Islamic world, bathing was considered a religious obligation. In Japan, bathing was a central part of daily life and culture. In India, bathing in rivers was spiritually significant and hygienic. But Europe was just out here convinced that water was basically poison, while the rest of the world was like, yeah, we're gonna keep our bodies clean, thanks. The legacy of this whole thing is actually pretty interesting. It's a reminder that even when something seems scientifically backed, even when it's supported by the experts of the time, it can still be completely, utterly wrong. Medieval physicians weren't stupid, they were working with incomplete information and drawing logical conclusions from flawed premises. They just happened to be catastrophically, hilariously wrong in a way that affected literally everyone's quality of life for centuries. So next time you take a shower, take a moment to appreciate the fact that you live in a time where bathing is considered healthy instead of deadly. Be grateful for modern medicine, for germ theory, and for the fact that your doctor isn't going to tell you that water is going to kill you. Because honestly, the medieval approach to hygiene is a masterclass in how to be confidently incorrect about something that really matters. And hey, if you found this absolutely wild, smash that like button. It's free, and unlike a medieval bath, it won't cause your pores to open and let disease in. Drop a comment telling me what medieval belief you find the most ridiculous. And if you want to hear about more absolutely bonkers historical misconceptions that somehow convinced entire civilizations to do stupid stuff, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We've got videos coming that'll make you wonder how humanity survived this long. Next time, we're breaking down why medieval people thought leeches could cure literally everything. And spoiler alert, they were wrong about that too. But not in the way you think. See you then.